Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest edition of Tales from Outer Space, where I take stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. Now, the like button has been searching for something. I think it might be a friend. So if you click on it, I think you'll be a little bit happier. And if you haven't subscribed to this channel and you enjoy the content, just subscribe and maybe leave a hugging emoji down in the comments, just to make sure the like button never gets lonely again. Anyways, on to the story. Human Safe, written by Dark Prince 010.
Come on, just a taste. You've let me try a little bit of almost everything else you've brought in.
Gerard's voice was wheedling, hoping to cajole and beg this hulking alien sitting at the cramped mission room table into sharing some of the meal that it had brought in a heavily shielded and secured container. The alien, a silicate-based species called Chungio, shook its ponderous head, pointing to the symbols and alien script depicting some form of warnings along the edge of the sealed box. "Not happening, little Gerard. This is intermixed with plutonium and cesium isotopes to help give me energy. If you ate it, you'd irradiate your little, fragile body and melt away, or something, I think." He sighed, a thunderous swooshing of wind from all three sets of enormous lungs. "Oh, we've already had this discussion before, and my answer is the same as before. This is not safe for you." Chungio's species had a stomach almost akin to a fission reactor, helping to melt down and separate compounds in rocks and minerals. They lacked any sort of grinding teeth, instead having a sort of baleen once used to strain the rich silt from their native waters. Now, their preferred method of consumption was baking, creating soft cakes and crumbled confectionaries mixed with the powdered nutrients they needed. Several of these were palatable to humans and helped create something that was akin to sugar cookie, if with a bit of an acidic metallic tang and some stubborn grittiness. And Chungio had given Gerard an occasional one of these treats, much to the human's delight. Gerard had tried to offer him some tastes of his fried meat skewers or boiled grain seeds in return, but they were distinctly bland and slimy to Chungio's tastes, and so he often accepted them only to dispose of them discreetly, without tasting the human foodstuffs. The small biped's enthusiasm was infectious, though, and Chungio knew that he had probably started bringing more human-safe meals along to work than he would have otherwise, if only to see the man's enthusiasm and gusto as he chowed down on the latest baked treat. He'd even begun mixing in some human nutritional powder called flour, something he couldn't taste, but provided a helpful degree of glutinous cohesion to some of his more crumbly recipes. Chungio had always fancied himself a baker, despite the strands of life leading him down a path of working at a mere hydrogen refinery. And while his family were all light years distant and seen only around his yearly leave period, Gerard presented a unique opportunity to test out new recipes and ideas when the ingredients permitted. There were a handful of other humans aboard, but most had only a passing interest in trying alien delicacies, while Gerard had what the humans called a bottomless pit for a digestive tract. The gravitational readings that he had surreptitiously taken of the human did not indicate any sort of localized singularities in his area, so the alien had taken it as simply an odd human turn of phrase instead. Months passed, each week marked by a new creation, feedback from the voracious human when possible, and refinement of his recipes before storing it in his personal baking logbook. Chungio had plans to one day publish a collection of those recipes, something Gerard said humans called a cookbook, but he wanted to ensure a sizable, respectable roster of culinary options before it was to be seen by anyone else. Then Gerard had disrupted his mental visions of accolades and invitations to baking competitions with a wood pulp box that he presented to the large alien. It was wrapped in a thin shell of iridescent foil, pressed and dried wood pulp, and topped with what looked like a flower or plant, made of a thin strip of green textile looped back and fastened upon itself dozens of times over. "What is this?" he asked, and the human just beamed. "Well, today's your birthday, your emergence day, so I wanted to get you something to celebrate it. It's a gift." Chungio's pairs of eyes widened in surprise. The human had asked him about his emergence day weeks and weeks ago, with what he had at the time taken to be only passing mild curiosity, as the alien spoke of the first time that he stepped forth from the birth pool he and his clutch were laid in, nearly 200 years earlier. He barely remembered the date himself, his species only making it to use for intergalactic census questions for individuals' ages, but the human had remembered, and then followed human customs and given him a gift as well. After a moment of hesitation, Chungyo ripped open the container, the massive and blocky fingers partially crushing the wood pulp box despite his best efforts, until he held a white cylindrical piece of textile with a pleated pattern along the long circular perimeter. "It is very nice, whatever it is, I suppose," he said, feeling awkward and slightly guilty that he didn't know more about the human culture to be able to recognize this object.
"It's a hat. It goes on your head," said Gerard proudly. "Specifically, it's a chef's hat. It's worn by humans whose professions are in baking, cooking, and similar food artistry."
Turning it over in his hands, Chungyo could see that the hat was also scaled to fit his enormous head, as it would be large enough to completely engulf Gerard if he tried to don it.
"Go on, try it. I hope that I got the estimates of the size measurements right," the human said.
The alien was unsure of what emotions were slowly but surely chugging through his veins as he gingerly placed the hat upon his head. His species wore almost no clothing like those of other races, typically restricting themselves to functional items like tool belts and protective vests, and only the occasional brightly colored wristbands or sashes to accentuate their appearance. Still, the surge of feeling through his mind finally coalesced into pride and appreciation as he caught sight of himself on a reflective metal panel nearby, and Gerard nodded approvingly.
"You're always a great chef, but now you look the part as well."
Chungyo was speechless for a long time, but the next day showed his appreciation with a large batch of human-safe confectionaries made entirely from the recipe Gerard had given him from his own mother's mother, something that he said was called Nana's scones. Almost half a century later, the day Chungyo had been dreading was rapidly approaching. Gerard's vision had been failing, despite laser and medicinal intervention, and the weeks prior had resulted in him accidentally activating a release valve too early in the refinement process. A wash of aerosolized chemicals had washed over the unfortunate and unshielded human, and while he had recovered moderately well from his initial effects, it had irreversibly damaged his fragile and singular set of lungs. Still bedridden, he was nevertheless greeted by Chungyo's daily visits with enthusiasm, even as the alien could see less and less energy and alertness from the human with each passing day. His joking and feedback on the new recipes was sharp as ever, though, and again he told the alien that he should stop stalling and publish his cookbook. "I'm not sure that it's ready yet," Chungyo had protested. "What if it's been too long since I tried a recipe, and the ingredients are unobtainable now? Or perhaps my palate has matured, and the old recipe was worse, or better?" Gerard had coughed and chuckled at that alien's hemming and hawing. "The best time to have done a task is yesterday, but the second best time is today. Just make the leap, old friend, or else you'll go to your grave full of regret." He coughed, and his eyes slid away as Chungyo looked on. "And what of you, little Gerard? Do you have any regrets?" The words "before you pass on" were left unspoken, but hung heavily between them. The on-board multi-species doctor had informed Chungyo that any further care was palliative, and Gerard's prognosis outside the next week was nil. "Well, there is one of your recipes I'd always wanted to try," he said at length. Chungyo hung on his every word, and as the human described it, he smiled, but lean showing like dark teeth as he emulated the human expression. "I think I have the ingredients for one last batch of that, although I'll need to dust off the canister seals. I haven't made it in some time, almost as long as I've known you, so I hope the recipe is still good." Gerard smiled back, laughing right and clearly for the first time in days, as he said, "I'm sure it is, old friend. Your treats never disappoint." Hours later, Chungyo had snuck back into the medical ward, avoiding scrutiny of doctors and nurses as he carried a sealed crate, dust-streaked alien radiation warning still stuck on the outside. Once in the human's room, he unsealed the crate, passing one of the gently glowing cookies over to the ailing human. Gerard eyed it admiringly, giving a low whistle that Chungyo had learned was a sign of appreciation, before biting into it with gusto. Then the human's eyes went wide with surprise. "Wow, that tastes just like peppermint." In a human graveyard, on one of the moons of Jupiter that Gerard had once said that he would like to visit, is a humble tombstone. On it lies a book, sun-bleached and otherwise preserved in a dry near vacuum of what passes for a moon's atmosphere. It was a copy of Baking for Humans, marked with the Galactic Bestseller sticker. Inside the cover is a handwritten dedication. To Gerard, my best customer and friend, you are missed. C. End of story. I would just quickly like to thank the T5 peeps: Dragon Soup, Cold War Boomerwaffen, Severin Cerberus, Red Panda 121, Leslie 517, Bushmaster 177, Caspar Arnholtz, Cam Maxwell, Sans the Skeleton, Light Jock, Dragzoon WRE, and Lord Azrakal. Thank you very much.